I'm here with Alexander Beckers, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, we have been covering Christopher Steele, I would say, just as good as anybody. Where everybody has ignored him, we've kept a focus on Christopher Steele, the MI6 agent that is one of the central, if not the central player, along with maybe Glenn Simpson, Rod Rosenstein. Probably these three guys are the central players in the Russiagate hoax, and especially in that scandalous dossier, Steele dossier, Trump dossier, the one that BuzzFeed published a couple of years ago and set this whole process in motion. Now we have new reports that reveal that Steele was actually using, to formulate a lot of the narrative in the dossier, he was actually using posts from random individuals on the CNN website. These weren't journalists. These were people that were creating posts on a section in CNN called I Report. In other words, you or me may have had an iReport account. It had open access and you were free to publish. It didn't have any editorial control. And you would create a post and you would publish it. And, from that point on, people would read your post and you'd promote it, etc. Huffington Post does something very, very similar with many writers that they have as well. But these are not journalists. These are not verified. This is not verified information. This is not double or triple checked whatsoever. These are just posts from writers that CNN grants access to. What do you make of this?
Well, I think this is extremely important news. And can I just say, you spoke about the importance of Christopher Steele. It is extremely important to remember that the only document that claims to be evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and his campaign and the Russian government and intelligence services is the dossier that Christopher Steele compiled. That dossier was the whole start of the collusion story, and by the admission of various people, it was what was the frame. It provided the frame narrative for the Mueller investigation, and it was accepted as true by people like Adam Schiff right at the start of Russiagate. Russiagate would not have happened without the Trump dossier. And the Trump dossier, this dossier that Steele created, was also used by James Comey in his first meeting as Donald Trump, just before Donald Trump was inaugurated, which we now know that Donald Trump thought that was an attempt to blackmail him. So this is a critically important document. And now we have this extraordinary admission from Christopher Steele, who has always claimed that he got his information from sources, secret sources, mostly within Russia, some from all sorts of other places, including, it turns out, the United States. But he's now frankly admitted that he was getting information from the news media, and that these weren't even verified reports. They were reports posted by various people who had no special knowledge about anything. I think this is as extraordinary as it gets, because this critically important document, accepted by the Democrats, used by the deep state, the FBI, the CIA, and all the others, apparently extracts of which were provided to Obama, which was shown to Donald Trump as an exercise which Trump thought was an exercise in blackmail. Turns out that parts of it may have derived, in fact, did derive from things that Christopher Steele had read in the media.
People's lives were ruined. People's lives were destroyed on posts created by just random individuals. That Steele was I think we said it before we did this show, that Steele was just too lazy to even do any research whatsoever. He just went on the internet, grabbed a couple of posts, and threw them into a dossier. I'm summarizing, I'm maybe simplifying it a little, but that's pretty much what's going on here.
You're not simplifying too far. Now, can I just tell you something? When I first read the dossier myself, which was back in February 2017, you can go back in time and you can see some of the things I wrote about it at the time. It was obvious to me right from the first moment that this thing didn't make any kind of sense. And I very quickly picked up that it was actually following the news. In other words, that it was being a lot of it was being written on the basis of things that were being reported in the media. So the first entries of the dossier don't talk about hacking by the Russians of the DNC, because there had been no talk about that yet. This was before Julian Assange and WikiLeaks published any emails that had been hacked or stolen or taken from the DNC or leaked from the DNC. Instead, it claimed that the Russians were going to leak information from a secret dossier they had of Hillary Clinton. And then, of course, that didn't happen. And we got instead the DNC email leaks. And then, surprise, surprise, the dossier shifted and said that it was all going to come out of it was all due to hacking. And it went into this elaborate story about how the Russians hack things. And then it went into a further story saying how one Russian official, Mr. Peskov, who was the press spokesman, was being criticized by various people within the Russian government for orchestrating this thing. And then a few weeks later, when instead of Mr. Peskov getting sacked, it was a man called Ivanov who got sacked from the Russian government for something completely unrelated, suddenly it was Peskov was forgotten and we moved on to Ivanov. And the most interesting thing about all of this is that I have seen other people who went into this in much more detail than I have done. And recently, the same exercise was done by Andrew McCarthy over at A National Review, going through all the various allegations that you see on the dossier. And without exception, they all seem to have come from the media. And here we see Christopher Steele admitting that he was getting information from the media, only not even, it turns out, from real reporters. So it's bizarre to me that this thing was ever taken seriously at all. As you rightly say, the damage it has done has been tremendous. And I think it is high time that Christopher Steele was asked some serious questions, not just in a court case, which has been brought against him in London, where he is being sued for defamation by a man called Gubarev, who has been in some way involved in the dossier, but properly questioned by the FBI, by investigators from the US, and brought to answer for what he did before congressional committees. It is staggering to me that we're finding these things out in this way.
Yeah, I agree. McCarthy, Dan Bongino, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, they've uncovered a lot of the hoax in Russia getting the Steele dossier. There's no doubt about it. And I agree.
It's entirely them. I mean, It's entirely down to them. It's not, as I said, the congressional committees. They haven't really been looking at this. It's obviously not the FBI and special counsel. On the contrary, they believed all this nonsense.
Craig Jarrett, Hannity, Tucker Carlson. Yeah. I mean, it's literally maybe 10 people. Most of them in Fox News have been the ones that have been drilling into this.
And don't forget us, Alex. I mean, we've written quite a bit about this. I mean, there's some pretty good articles about this. But as I said, it's very, very strange and very worrying that this is so. And as I said, we're only getting these dribbles of facts because somebody is suing Christopher Steele in defamation in the High Court in London, and we're getting dribs and drabs of things coming out of a court case. I mean, that's not a satisfactory way to look at a document that has been so important.
Yeah.